Today we're going to talk about grace, that we talked last week about grace. And last week I gave homework about using your own willpower to attract God's grace, and then like a feedback loop to use God's grace in order to overcome something that you may be struggling with. I myself, whatever homework I do or give, I do. And what I learned this week is that I have to be very clear in how I want to use my willpower. That if it's a little bit vague, oh, I'll just kind of try to maybe do this or work on this thing, that it will get sloppy and it will break apart and it won't work. But that if I'm very clear that I will set my mind, I will set my will for this 1 week and do a certain thing, that then when I even put a little bit of my power, I feel the power of the universe coming behind to support that. In fact, it's a lot like the guitar, there it is on screen there, that it has the sounding board, that cavern beneath there, that if it was just a stick and strings, the strings might make a little bit of sound, but because it has the sounding board back there, that when you pluck the string, the sound can fill an entire big hall. And that's the exact same thing with our will and then the power of the universe behind it. That we still have to pluck the string, we have to use our will to do whatever it is, but then that will attract a power and a grace. By the way, if you take two guitars and you play one of the notes, one of the strings, and put another guitar near it, that other guitar, it will vibrate, that string will start vibrating because you played on this guitar, if they're both perfectly in tune. And so the more we get in tune with the universe, that power can flow through us. Today I wanted to talk about Christ and grace and a little of my own experience growing up here in India. That for a long time I didn't really want anything to do with Christianity for the way that it was presented to me growing up in the West. But as I came to Master's teachings, as I came to Swamiji, I began to understand that what I had been presented and what Christ actually was bringing were two very separate things. It's a very important point also for us to realize that whoever is presenting whatever teachings, they can only present as much as they actually understand. That if their consciousness is at this level and Christ's consciousness is up here, they won't be able to explain that. But we can't find fault with Christ, and we shouldn't even find fault with this person. We should just try to say, okay, that's where they are, and they're trying to explain a truth to the best of their capacity. But we ourselves should try to raise ourselves all the way to a level of Christ. That this is why we've come on this path, so that we can achieve God realization, so that we can achieve Christ consciousness, which is the exact same thing as Krishna consciousness. So I wanted to emphasize that Master said that he came to help us all remember the true teachings of Christianity. He used to say that Christ was crucified once, but his teachings have been crucified ever since for the last 2,000 years because people did not understand them. And that's okay, but we're trying to tune into, number one, the true Christ through the depth of our own meditation. And then number two, to Christ representatives, to the saints that have achieved God realization and understand Christ through that. I have a little reading, we'll get to it in a moment, that explains that more deeply. It is important. Before we get to that, it's a personal experience that I want to say. The then leader of Ananda Sangha India, Dharmadas, one day we were in the basement of this house called B10 by 8, where it kind of all started here in India. And we were talking a little bit about Swami Kriyananda, and he kind of paraphrased this quote from the Bible for me, and I pulled that up today. And I'm just, you know what, I'm not going to read the Bible. I'm just going to say it as Dharmadas said to me. It's just easier to understand normal, everyday English. So basically, Christ asked the disciples who do people say that I am? Are people saying that I'm this or that? And so the disciples started saying, oh, well, some say that you're John the Baptist, others say that you are Elijah, and still others, they say that you're Jeremiah, or maybe one of these other prophets. Again, showing that the Bible did believe in reincarnation. It's Christians who have messed that whole thing up. But so the disciples of Christ were saying, well, maybe people say this, that, people say all kinds of things. Then Christ said to Peter, who's mentioned as Simon Peter, but who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you are the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. And Christ said, blessed are you. He basically said, very good, Peter. He said, no one could have told you that it was only God's grace, that God himself helped you understand that. So as we look, and so Dharmadas and I were having this discussion about Swami Kriyananda, because he was kind of saying to me, Jamal, who do you think Swamiji is? And I was saying, Swamiji is the Son of God, that he is a Christ. And Dharmadas was saying, very good. No one could tell you that. You couldn't go ask the other monks, who's Swamiji? Is Swamiji enlightened? Does Swamiji have this? Does he have this city? That's just people talk. People say all kinds of stuff, but you don't actually know. But if God gives you that grace to know, to realize, to really know in your heart that, whoa, here's something special here, that there's not just a man there, there's something much deeper beyond that. That's God's grace. And so we need to pray for that grace, for God to show us who the saints are. I'm going to go more into that, but I'm going to request Premdas to share that slide. So this is from The New Path, the chapter called Original Christianity. I'm going to read it and then talk a little bit about why I chose this. The only valid authority on spiritual matters is true wisdom, based on true spiritual experience. For such experience, we must look not to the commentaries of learned scholars and theologians, but to self-realized saints. I repeat, only true saints can be the true custodians of religion. The words of the saints, wrote Saint Gregory of Sinai, if they are carefully examined, never disagree. All alike speak the truth, wisely changing their judgments on these subjects when necessary. When I first read that, I said, what? All alike speak the truth, wisely changing? Wait. If it's the truth, why are we wise? Like, does wise mean that we're getting fooled here? No. And then we read on and Swamiji explains, why are we wisely changing their judgments? Because it's necessary for the same fundamental truths to be presented according to the varying needs of the times. Saint Simon, the new theologian, wrote, a man who does not desire to link himself to the latest of the saints, of course, in time, in all love and humility, owing to a certain distrust, will never be linked with the preceding saints, and will not be admitted to their succession, even though he thinks he possesses all possible faith and love for God and for his saints. All who know God drink from the same fountain. Therefore, to reject any expression of him is, to that extent, to reject God himself. This is super important. We almost leave it up just for like 30 seconds more. Okay, it's okay. Basically, we all think, oh yeah, I love Krishna. Yes. It's safe to love Krishna. Krishna's not here to yell at you, to say you're making a mistake. And it's a little scary sometimes to sign up with, a living guru. And then Swamiji, he never even called himself a guru, and he would always direct us back to Master, but you had to know who he truly was. He himself would not tell you. Nobody else could tell you. You had to figure it out. But so most people, owing to a certain distrust, they'll worship the past saints. But if they do not kind of link up here with the current saints in time, then they won't be admitted even to the past saints. So now you can bring it back. So this grace for God to show us who the saints in this time are is very important. Swamiji would often talk about people, they didn't want to go through Swamiji, that they just wanted to go through to Master directly on their own. But we need the living links. And in fact, even I was saying there might be a saint, you can take this down now, Primdas. There might be like someone trying to explain Christ, but he's not all the way up here yet. We still need to even listen to this guy, even if he's not fully realized, and see, is there truth in there? And try to use that truth to try to go through to God. We need to get to a state where we're seeing God acting in everything, even though it might not be yet perfectly pure. And all of this understanding comes through God's grace. So we'll keep purifying ourselves, we'll keep praying, we'll keep doing all of the techniques so that we can receive God's grace. I need to hand it over to Primdas, and thank you.
Thank you, Jamali. Okay, and yeah, good evening, everyone, again. Just nice again to keep all of us supporting each other on this spiritual path, and we all trying to tune into this Christ consciousness and how to cooperate with grace. So today again I'll touch a little more on the Easter, because Christ was resurrected tomorrow, the Easter day when he came back, and this was when the body of Christ was crucified. That's when he carried out his statement. This was said by him: destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rise up. And like when Jesus said these words, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up, it was not like other mortals who could not separate souls from bodies. He was saying this from the state of Christ consciousness, that he would rebuild his body after destruction. But not many people knew what he was saying then, but then we realize it. So many times when saints say few words, we are not sure, because it's always sometimes in riddles and sometimes in this. But when we start tuning in, and all those his close disciples who are in tune, and I don't know if there was this Ashaji's talk recently, and I was hearing to it, and she used to say, even when among her close disciples, all the close disciples used to ask Saint Peter, what did Christ really mean? And he would try to understand, and he would sometimes ask Jesus, what did you mean this way? Sometimes it was that way. So it's always important for us to keep tuning in. And the one more thing is this resurrection of Christ, which happened on Easter. It was not performed to glorify anything of his flesh. He did this. This is from Master's article, that he wanted to show that men, what can be done by tuning into Christ intelligence. Any man who can receive Christ in his consciousness through expanding it in meditation can become a son of God and can perceive the universe as his body. This is Master's words, what I just read. Any man who can receive Christ in his consciousness through expanding it in meditation can become a son of God and can perceive the universe as his body. How true it is. Each time in our meditation, the final step which we always study, the expansion after interiorization, the expansion step, also the time when we become one with this thing, the qualities of God. Also, like Swamiji always keeps suggesting, that feel that your body is space, or try to feel the space within your body and try to connect with it. So like Christ rose up, and here's one more small suggestion tomorrow for Easter. Master says that in that article which I read, he says spend at least a few hours lifting your consciousness from the domain of matter into the vastness of spirit, or into the silence within your own temple, and commune with the risen Christ there. So yeah, let's take this opportunity. However, how much your time you get, maybe try to tune in to this quality, because during this time, special times, this like a this thing, the veil becomes thinner, is what they say. All the saints say during that time, the Christ blessings come through more easily if we are more in tune. And somehow during that time, sit on the throne of Christ consciousness. And this is what Master says: sane realization. I and my Father are one. I and my Father are one. I and my Father are one. how important it is. So just by we can all try this so tomorrow and it'll be much more easier. Like during the Christmas or 8 hour meditation times, how much we all feel their blessings. I think this is a good opportunity to tune in the Easter time. Very good. Now coming back to cooperating with grace. It's all interlinked, we all know, and we'll again now how to cooperate with this grace of Christ, or this Christ, this thing, joy, Christ bliss, Christ peace, Christ harmony. So we'll just think about it. And just a quote which I would like to share and read for you. This Swamiji says, cooperating with grace then means to move always to meet God halfway in our lives, constantly to hold up the chalice of a consciousness to be filled up by Him. It means to love Him actively and not just mean Him well. It means finally to become absorbed in Him. One more small quote, this thing. Okay, then. How important it is sometimes with anything. I think you even last session we looked up at this point that we also have to make our effort. The self effort versus grace is what we discussed, and similarly each time we have to put out that effort, put out that energy to meet Him halfway, or to lift our consciousness, or to lift our cup so that He can fill it up. I think once Swamiji, or between Master, this discussion happened, and Master said, "How can a small cup hold the ocean of bliss or this thing love?" And so we have to expand our cup slowly, slowly. I think all our teachings mainly. I think Master has given us all these teachings. If we somehow keep doing it regularly and somehow keep improving each time with devotion and with love, I think also during in one of these Kriyavan talks, I heard how Swamiji says, if you look at any people who have excelled in any field, they somehow have the art and science well, like in the composition, like they always give their best, and they're also the ones who are the most hardworking compared to others around. They don't hesitate to give, and somehow all their energies are concentrated this way. And somehow we also slowly, I think after coming to path, you all realize how slowly few things drop off, and maybe some friends drop off or from habits drop off slowly, slowly. As we keep proceeding, we just feel like all these energies are coming up inward and upward. So I think next quote goes into that. I'll just pull it up. So cooperating with grace means directing all one's energies, all one's thoughts, and all one's desires towards pleasing God and Christ, withholding nothing selfishly for oneself. Withholding nothing selfishly for oneself. I think, again, I think how much we give, so much we receive in many ways. And if we keep offering ourselves up, and if we can make the Kriya, I think is good practice. And Hong So, all the practices we keep learning on this path, how to keep giving ourselves, offering completely to God. I think that will again lead to it. And thinking about cooperating with grace, I remembered this story which I read recently in a blog. This is about Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna's parents. Their name was Sudhiram and Chandra Devi. So how during their life they faced so many troubles, and there was one incident where he was an ardent devotee of Lord Rama, the Ramakrishna, Saint Ramakrishna's father. So what happened once a land or some, what do you call, like a tahsildar or the person in the village who was like a person in power asked him to say something which was against the righteousness, and he did not agree and he did not say it, and because of doing that he lost his property, and they were happy. And then they had to move to a different town or different village. By God's grace, one more friend of his offered him the land, and they moved there. And again, there many times they did not have food, but they kept feeding other people, and just they were always trying to give, and give to God somehow in devotion. Both were ardent followers. And then what happens? All the experiences keep happening. I think once there is an incident where a saligrama appears for Ramakrishna, and a snake is protecting it, and he gets to keep it, or he gets to do the worship from then on, or he gets the vision of all these his ancestors standing when he goes to Varanasi or Kashi, and a saint or a saintly figure, a angel telling, "I'll be born with you. Will you please serve me?" And even his wife had a similar incident where she felt this light entering her. And when they both exchanged notes, they got to know that the son who is going to be born is a saint. And just by cooperating with grace, how they cooperated and how they kept giving and how their devotion grew into their family, the saint to be born, because it's always uh, the saints have to be born in that circumstance also, and how blessed were they for getting this opportunity. And again, I'll just one more small quote. This will again touch on the same points. Hmm. So I'm not able, so I'll just read it. So also here Swamiji says the energy in the body should flow inward and upward. If it is inward but at the same time causes a withdrawal into depression, so here Swamiji is saying if it's only inward and not upward, what happens? If it's only inward, it can become depression, rejection, or any form of negativity. It cannot be divine, and therefore it can be called satanic. And if it is upward but not inward, it will result in frivolity and vanity, and will be as much as a move. So this also won't help. So what is more important is also to be always upward and inward, to try to keep our energy upward and inward, to bring up the chalice of cup to offer to God, so that his consciousness can flow freely, so that we can cooperate with grace and can be more in tune with him, so that we can share the blessings with all. And now I'll request Jamalji again to give us some little thoughts and also a little homework for this time.
I'll say two things. Um, One, what Premdas just said, it's actually taken me like 15 years more maybe on the spiritual path to come to understand these things, because we just hear, yes, yes, you know, our energy should be up. Um, but it's when maybe we're even happy and everything's going well, but it's like a little bit not in tune with God. And we wonder, where am I off here a little bit? And maybe our energy is going up, but it's also going outward. Or maybe as our energy is going inward, but it's also going downward. And and it takes time to learn how to figure out these four directions with our energy, but it can be done, and in the end, it all does make sense. This morning, I don't know if any of you here came to the 2-hour Kriyaban meditation, but Swamiji said, and I think that most people I see on my screen here are Kriyabans. He said, you have no idea. He basically said, you can't even understand what you've been given with Kriya and what this promise means, that you can achieve liberation in this one lifetime. Because we can't see all of the past incarnations, maybe millions, maybe even a billion incarnations as a human being, and what it means that we can actually have freedom from all of that in one lifetime is huge. But then he went on to say, but you have to do it. That it's not enough to just passively ask God to do it. Swamiji would often talk that the spiritual path is like opening the curtains. The sunlight is always there, but and that grace, it wants to come in, but our job is to open that curtains. Once Christ, I hope I don't go over time here, but once Christ said that all of the tribes of earth would see him, let's say, coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And so people were thinking, and people to this day think that Christ is just going to have like millions of bodies and he'll be everywhere. But whoever's a yogi knows that in this cloud-like light of inner vision, that Christ can come at any time, anywhere, to souls whose hearts were pure and therefore receptive to his grace. There's the chant, Cloud-Colored Christ. That's all about understanding what goes on here in this inner sky. Anyways, not more time to explain that. Homework, huh? I think your homework for the week is to figure out how you can love God more perfectly. And that obviously is a vast, vast question. But then try to be honest with yourself and honest with your heart's feelings and see if you can really feel God's love and God's grace coming deeper into you. And see if you can try to understand this connection between loving God more and receiving more of that grace. So last time was willpower and grace. This time is love and grace. And see if you can figure out how those two go together.